Hey everyone, we are going to go through a little exercise together to get a little more comfortable with using fonts, font families, font weights, all the different types of text properties within Figma, and we're going to learn how to elevate a brand. So I often get clients that come to me in a scenario where they just have their logo, they have some colors, they basically only have like one typeface, and they say, okay, we want to basically build a new website and we want to convey that, we're responsible, we've been around for a long time. I did have a charity come to me one time when I was working as a consultant, and it was very similar to this kind of situation that we're going to play out here. They came to me with just like this type of logo, and it was really plain. If I'm just going to drag that logo, just a text file out here, it was like this, Montserrat was the font. It was very much just Montserrat. They had a couple of body styles, they had a couple of headings, but everything was Montserrat. The thing though that we need to really think about here is, well, how do we actually expand upon this a bit more and, get people to really trust them based off of their brand? Don't get me wrong, Montserrat's a really beautiful font, and it's actually really it's a large font family, but we have some options here in terms of how we can expand upon this. So let's just run through a couple different scenarios. Let's just use our Lorem Ipsum plugin to just help us sift through some of this content. So I'm just going to take that text file and just paste it outside here. So we're going to use this frame that we have here. And I'm not going to allow this to close. So I'm just going to leave it right there. And let's think of some ways we can have some headings. So I'm just going to generate some words here. So we have this is what they had. And if I were to generate, say, a paragraph underneath here, it'd look something like this, and it wouldn't be semi-bold. It'd be maybe regular, and it would be 16 pixels in size. Oops. There we go. And then, we'd have maybe 150% on its line height. And it's kind of hard to read already. So, the other problem is just not having a large enough color palette to work with. So we're just going to expand this frame. So that way we have more room to play with. I'm actually just going to delete that for now. And we don't need this huge paragraph just yet. I mean, we can have maybe multiple paragraphs or something like that. You could just say 4 sentences, and there we go. So they would have maybe something like this where there's a couple paragraphs. Maybe there's a subheading over here. And it wasn't really expansive. So definitely follow along with me. And, see about different ways that you can actually, work with typography, just like I am. Another thing that they did have though, they had different UI kit options. So they would have a button, and it would say this would be the label, and we would have 14 pixels. We could wrap this in an auto layout container just by pressing Shift A. And here we go. So I'm moving a little quickly here. And there we go. Welcome. And then it would be something like this, teal with white. So, there's different ways we can handle palettes and, just general typography systems that are very limited like this, where they're only really providing you a bit of a couple of headings and, some text options. There may be this smaller text option here that, it just doesn't do much. And the way we do that is through two ways. We can do it by creating contrast with color and contrast with typography. And this is how I approach it. Now, generally what I like to do is for things like this, I'll actually just search for another font. I'll use in this case something like like Palatino, which is a nice font. You can also use something like Garamond, which is another nice font. And so already now, like, we're starting to see that we're not necessarily throwing away Montserrat at all. We are actually like using this and maybe some color now, like we can bring in color here to create a little bit of a different mood. So if I create another duplicate here, I'm going to right click on this frame and expand it. And I think, like, you know, this is generally fine, this text block. You know, we could maybe bump it down in color a bit just to create, you know, a little bit more contrast between the two. And then, you know, if we do need things like subheadings, you know, we can go into our font details here and we can select like all caps and we can increase the spacing. And there we go. Like we're already starting to create some, you know, nice little changes to this whole design. And if I just like bring this down, because we don't want this to be like super big, and bring this over. Oops, that's a little bit too much. We can even bump it down in size so it's not like too crazy. And I think the button is generally fine, to be honest. But like you notice the difference here now, like we have like a little bit more of like a family of just like font weights and font styles working together. And we have a whole different way of, you know, just like viewing how this content's going to work. So this one can come up a little bit more. And maybe this one is like medium because it's like, you know, it's like that header font. So we've already created a bit more just like general like contrast between all this content. Another thing is, like, a lot of people forget about some of these different typographic elements that they aren't necessarily like thought of from the forefront. But if I were to say, come up with a quote. So I have like one sentence that's a big quote. You know, I can really come in here and play around a bit and start like bringing some interesting like pieces out. And now we've created like this cool little style. Even if we wanted to like say, bring it just like as like something that's dark, or, you know, decrease that type of contrast with that. We could also, you know, bump this up to like a larger heading size. It's all about playing around with, you know, some of the sizes as they work together, working with your base unit size to ensure that you're not necessarily, you know, going over that. And let's just, there we go. That's a larger quote. So I'm just grabbing a larger quote here. And there we go. And we can just like, we can cap this off with bringing one of these down here and just, you know, this was said by John Doe. And there we go. Like, you know, from this to this, like, I feel like, you know, bringing in that serif font really helped us bring it back to that traditional, like, you know, state of trust. Whereas, you know, just the sans serif maybe is just not enough for a brand like this. Whereas, you know, if this foundation that came to me and, you know, they've been around for a long time and they wanted to establish that, you know, we have been around a long time, you should trust us, we're friendly, you know, using some of the colors, even with typography and mixing those together, really helps, you know, elevate this brand a bunch. Personally, I think this is like a night and day difference.